The press conference was called at dawn, not because answers were ready, but because silence had begun to look like weakness. The head of police arrived without escorts, without ceremony. No sirens, no crowd control beyond a thin line of tired officers. He stepped into the open space like a man walking onto unstable ground and choosing not to pretend otherwise. His uniform was immaculate, his face was not. "This case will not be simplified for comfort," he said, voice steady, eyes scanning the gathered reporters, cameras, citizens who had learned to look for certainty in posture, and it will not be rushed for convenience. Behind him, 3 names hung unspoken but heavy: Harris, Sadiq, and now another. He continued, "We are widening the scope of this investigation. Every disappearance, every location, every hour that has been edited, misrepresented, or ignored." A pause, deliberate. "There is a child missing." The word child landed differently. This time, the city inhaled together. "A boy," the head of police said, "last seen near the canal road just before evening prayers. No witnesses, no noise, no body." He did not raise his voice when he said the name, Emeka. The cameras leaned in. Emeka was not unknown. He sold phone accessories from a wooden store near the bus park. Chargers, power banks, SIM cards that worked when nothing else did. He was always there, always watching the road, always plugged into something. Too visible to be invisible, too ordinary to be questioned, until now. "We are not declaring guilt," the head of police said, anticipating the hunger in the air, "but we are declaring focus." Behind the scenes, his orders were already moving. Harris was re-interviewed, this time not about what he did, but about what he saw. Sadiq was questioned again, this time not about the cinema, but about power sources, generators, places that stayed lit when the city went dark. And Emeka's stall was sealed quietly before sunrise. No announcements, no spectacle, just absence. Dyrus watched from his van as officers dismantled the wooden table piece by piece. Under it, taped to the frame, they found a crude hand-drawn map, not of streets, but of lights. Places with power, places without, times when darkness changed hands. Harriet stood nearby, arms folded, saying nothing, because she already knew this was not about one man, or 2, or 3. This was about control of night. The head of police understood it now too. That afternoon, he addressed the city again, this time without microphones. To those responsible, he said, looking directly into the cameras, "You have mistaken patience for blindness. That ends now." He named them carefully: Harris, Sadiq, Emeka. One of you knows more than you've said. One of you has said nothing at all. And one of you is counting on the city to keep choosing the wrong story. His voice hardened, not loud but immovable. "We will bring all of you to account, not for what is convenient, but for what is true." The broadcast ended. Somewhere in Abeni City, a generator hummed. A door closed softly, and the child's name waited to be explained. The night once again learned that it was being watched. The head of police did not sleep that night. He sat in his office with the lights off, the city glowing faintly through the blinds, listening to reports come in without interruption. He had learned that people spoke more honestly when they were not being guided. Emeka had vanished. Not fled, not arrested, vanished. By the time officers returned to the bus park with a warrant, the stall was gone. The wood dismantled cleanly. The ground swept. Only a faint rectangle of dust marked where his livelihood had stood for years. Too neat. A junior officer whispered, "Sir, it's like he knew." The head of police did not respond. He was looking at a printed still from a nearby shop's CCTV. Grainy, tilted, almost useless. Almost. At 6:42 p.m., Emeka appeared in frame, locking his stall earlier than usual. At 6:45, a child stepped toward him, small, hesitant, familiar enough not to fear. At 6:46, the camera glitched, not broke, glitched. When it returned, both were gone. No scream, no struggle, no chase, just a gap in time. Bring Harris in, the head of police said quietly, and Sadiq again, together this time. In the interrogation room, the air tightened. Harris talked too much, Sadiq talked too little. When the head of police finally entered, the room shifted. Chairs straightened, voices stilled. Authority, real authority, does not announce itself. It arrives and rearranges the room. You all relied on darkness, he said calmly. Different reasons, same mistake. He slid photographs across the table, a hidden generator, an extension cable running on the ground, a back room behind Emeka's stall, never registered, never inspected. He used the city's blind spots, he continued, but blind spots only work until someone decides to stand still and look. Sadiq's jaw tightened. Harris avoided eye contact. The head of police leaned forward. The child is alive, he said. That was the strike. Harris looked up sharply. Sadiq inhaled. Silence cracked. We found fresh food wrappers. The head of police added. Water bottles. Recent. Hope entered the room like a dangerous thing. And whoever is holding him, he finished, is listening right now. Across the city, a generator faltered. Somewhere on the ground, a phone lit up. And Emeka, watching the news from a place not meant to exist, realized too late that the city had stopped guessing. It had started hunting. The head of police changed tactics. No more press briefings. No more visible patrols. The city mistook the silence for exhaustion. It was preparation. By early morning, officers were no longer moving in convoys. They arrived singly, on mats, on foot, as places no one thought to guard. Closed kiosks, half-built shops. Forgotten drainage exists where power cables disappeared underground. Harriet walked with them unnoticed. They followed electricity. Not where it was supposed to be, but where it should not exist. At 2:11 a.m., a breaker tripped somewhere beneath the canal road. At 2:13, a generator restarted. Too fast, too practiced. The head of police received the message and stood up without a word. Now, he said, at the abandoned cinema, Sadiq broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just one sentence spoken to the wall. He is not supposed to take children. That was all. It was enough. Within minutes, officers lifted the rusted manhole cover behind what used to be Emeka's store. Warm air rushed out. Lights followed. Down below, a narrow corridor pulsed with electricity. And at the far end, a child's shoe. One. Not abandoned, removed. The head of police descended slowly, every step measured. This was no random crime. No panic, no accidents. This was a system. And systems always have someone at the center who believes they are untouchable. Above ground, a phone vibrated in Emeka's pocket. He did not answer. For the first time since the disappearances began, the city felt something unfamiliar settle into its bones. Not fear, but anticipation. Because the aunt was no longer asking who. It was closing in on how many. And somewhere in the dark, someone realized the city had finally learned where to look. They did not rush the tunnel. The head of police knew better. Rushing made noise. Noise warned systems. He stood at the mouth of the corridor, touched low, letting his eyes adjust. The walls were reinforced with scavenged concrete slabs, improvised but not careless. Wires ran cleanly along the ceiling. Someone had planned for permanence. This wasn't built in panic, he said quietly. This was built to last. Behind him, an officer whispered, "Sir, there is more than one room." That was when the city's fear finally shifted shape. They moved deeper. The first room was empty. The second, locked. The third smelled of soap, metal, and something recently cooked. A mattress, plastic bottles, a child's drawings crashed into the wall with charcoal. A sun, a house, no people. Alive. The head of police exhaled once, controlled, measured. Seal every exit, he ordered. No sirens, no shouting. Whoever is down here is listening for confidence. Above ground, Harris was pacing. Sadiq sat very still. They both had it when the power flickered, just once. Enough. Sadiq whispered, he knows the tunnel better than anyone. Who? The officer asked. Sadiq swallowed. Emeka didn't build this alone. That was the moment the case widened again. Down below, a door creaked open. Footsteps retreated, not running, but certain. The head of police smiled faintly. Not with relief, but with recognition. Good, he said. Now we know he's close. Somewhere ahead, a light switched off. And somewhere behind them, another one came on. The night had revealed its center, and the city was finally standing inside it. The head of police stopped walking. Everyone behind him stopped too, not because he raised a hand, but because the tunnel had gone quiet in a way that felt intentional. The hum of the generator dropped to a softer pitch, like it was being throttled from somewhere ahead. Someone was listening. Emeka, the head of police, said calmly, his voice carrying just enough to be heard. This ends tonight. No echo. No reply. Instead, a light clicked on. 2 rooms ahead. Then another. Then darkness behind them. The tunnel rearranged itself. That's not random. Harriet whispered. He's herding. Yes, the head of police replied, and it thinks he's in control. They moved again. Slow, deliberate, refusing to chase. In the olden room upstairs, Harris finally spoke the truth he had been saving. He paid me, he said, voice cracking, not to take anyone, just to watch, to point, to tell him when streets went quiet. Sadiq added his own sentence, barely audible. He told me which nights to log leads, which hours to erase. Pieces locked. Below ground, Emeka realized the pattern had failed. The child had stopped crying, stopped moving. So calm, that frightened him. He backed toward the last room, the one he never used, the one meant only for escape. He reached for the switch. It didn't respond. Power cut, total. For the first time, Emeka stood in the dark without owning it. A torch beam cut through the black, then another, then a third. The head of police stepped into view. Night doesn't belong to you, he said. You just borrowed it. Behind him, officers moved in. Somewhere in the tunnel, a child whispered, and the darkness finally exposed had nowhere left to hide. No one rushed Emeka. That unsettled him more than shouting ever could. The torchlight stayed fixed on his face, not blinding, just enough to deny him darkness. The child was behind the half wall, knees drawn in, silent, not unconscious, just listening. The head of police raised a hand. Take the child first. Carefully, slowly, no sudden movement. When the officer lifted the boy, Emeka flinched. Not forward, not back, sideways. Toward a switch you already knew was dead. You planned for noise, the head of police said. You didn't plan for stillness. Emeka laughed once, short, sharp, defensive. "You are late," he said. "This place has been empty before you noticed it existed." The head of police stepped closer. "No," he replied, "you stayed too long." Above ground, word began to spread, but not the full story. Not yet. Only enough to change the city's posture. People locked doors earlier. Lights stayed on longer. The night lost its confidence. Harris was moved to a separate room. Sadiq was kept waiting. Both listening. Both realizing the same thing. They had been useful, not essential. In the tunnel, Emeka's smile faded as he noticed something missing. No cuffs. "No?" he asked. "You are not arresting me?" The head of police met his eyes. "Not here," he said. "This place deserves silence." Emeka's phone buzzed in his pocket. Once, then stopped. Whatever network had protected him had gone dark. As officers led him toward the stairs, he looked back. Just once, at the tunnel he had built, lit, and controlled. It was already being dismantled, cable by cable, light by light. And somewhere deep in Abeni City, another door, unconnected, unnoticed, clicked open. The night was not finished. It was only learning how to adapt. Emeka did not resist. That disturbed the head of police more than panic ever could. As they climbed out of the tunnel, Emeka kept glancing upward, not at the officers, not at the guns, but at the sky, as if measuring how much night was left. "You think this ends with me?" Emeka said quietly. No one answered. The child was handed over to medics without cameras, without names spoken aloud. The head of police watched until the vehicle disappeared, then turned back to the station. That was when the second call came in. Another child, not missing, not taken, returned. Left at the gate of a closed primary school, barefoot, unarmed, wrapped in a jacket that did not belong to them. No notes, no message, no explanation, just presence. The city felt it immediately. Fear hesitated. At the station, Harris began to cry, not from guilt, but from realization. Sadiq stared at the floor, finally understanding the size of what he had helped maintain. Emeka sat alone in holding, calm again. Too calm. The head of police entered without warning. "You built one place," he said. "Who built the rest?" Emeka smiled faintly. "I didn't," he replied. "I learned where they already were." Silence followed. Not denial, not confession, a warning. Outside, generators across Abeni City flickered. Not off, not on, just enough to be noticed. Harriet stood by the window watching lights rearrange themselves across the neighborhoods. Patterns, not chaos. The head of police straightened his jacket. This was no longer a case of disappearances, it was a network. And tonight, the city had only touched one edge of it. Somewhere, someone else was counting on darkness, and someone else was watching to see if the police would dare to keep looking. The head of police went back on air at first light. Not to celebrate, not to reassure, to commit. His face filled every screen, creased, tired, unmistakably present. "We recovered one child alive," he said. "That is not victory, that is responsibility." He did not look down at notes. He did not soften his voice. Harris acted as a watcher. Sadiq altered time. Emeka controlled access to lights. Each name landed cleanly. None of them walked alone. The city stilled. "I am ordering a full audit of every abandoned site, every unofficial power source, every place the city stopped caring for before criminals started using it." A pause. "And I am personally overseeing this investigation." That was new. In Abeni City, senior officers did not promise personal oversight unless something had already frightened them. But Behind closed doors, the work accelerated. Old permits were reopened. The commission generators were traced. Phone records were rebuilt, not from calls, but from charging points. Who needed power? Where? At what hours? Harriet led the team quietly, matching logs to outages to movement. Dyrus followed patterns no one wanted to acknowledge. And then holding, Emeka finally asked the question, "Have you found him yet?" The head of police stopped at the door. "Found who?" he asked. Emeka's smile did not return. "The one who taught me," he said. "The one who told us the city forgets faster than it forgives." That was when the head of police understood. This network did not move children first, it moved belief. Somewhere else in the city, a light turned on in a building that had been listed as empty for years. Someone was watching the broadcast. Someone was listening to the promise. And someone was deciding whether the head of police meant it. The night held its breath, so did the city. The building that lit up should not have been able to. Its power line was dead on record. Its lease expired 6 years ago. Its address had stopped appearing on patrol routes. Yet the light stayed on. The head of police did not send a team, he went himself. No uniform this time, just a jacket, a notebook. The weight of a promise. The weight of a promise he had already made publicly and could no longer afford to break privately. Inside, the room was bare except for a table and a wall covered in markings. Not names, zones, times, outages, returns. Someone had mapped the city the way predators map territory. Not by roads, but by attention. Where cameras failed, where patrols skipped, where people stopped asking questions. At the center of the wall was a single phrase, written small, almost respectful. Belief travels faster than truth. The head of police exhaled slowly. So Emeka had learned. Harris had watched. Sadiq had adjusted time. But none of them had designed this. A phone on the table vibrated once. "Unknown number," he answered. "You promised to look," a calm voice said. Older, measured, not afraid. Most men stop once the city feels safe again. "Where are the others?" the head of police asked. A pause. "Closer than you think," the voice replied. "Farther than you can reach, unless you are willing to let the city be afraid a little longer." The line went dead. Back at the station, Harriet stared at a new report. Another power source. Another abandoned building. Another light. Different districts. Same signature. Dyrus said it quietly, like a conclusion no one wanted. "This isn't a network anymore," he said. "It is a philosophy." In holding, Emeka smiled for the first time since his arrest. "He found you," he said to no one in particular. "That means the city is ready." Outside, Abeni City did not sleep. It watched its lights. And somewhere above the map of disappearances, a man waited to see whether the head of police would dare to keep his promise. The head of police did not report the building, he locked it. Not officially, not on record. Some truths collapsed when shared so quickly. By morning, Abeni City felt different, not louder, not calmer, not alert. People began noticing things they had trained themselves to ignore. Light on at odd hours, shop opening without customers, men who never hurried, only waited. At the station, Harriet spread photographs across the table. Each showed the building once declared inactive. All lit, all recent, all clean. No dust on switches, no rust on locks. "These aren't hideouts," she said. "They are listening posts." Dyrus nodded. He is watching reactions, measuring belief. The head of police stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear. The voice returned. "You've started seeing patterns?" It said. "That means you are past the point of comfort." "Who are you?" the head of police asked. Another pause. "I am what happens," the voice replied, "when a city learns that fear moves faster than law." The call ended. At the same moment, Emeka's lawyer arrived. Too fast, too prepared. The head of police watched Emeka walk past, calm again, protected again. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Not angry, not violent, waiting crowd. Waiting to see which story the city would choose next. The head of police turned back to his team. "We don't stop," he said quietly, "even if they tell us to." Harriet closed her folder. Dyrus reached for his keys. And somewhere in the city, a light switched off, not because it had been discovered, but because it no longer needed to be on. The man above the map was adjusting, so was the city. The order came quietly, no paperwork, no signatures, just a look from the head of police that said, "This stays between us." "Find the buildings that turn off when we look at them," he said. That changed everything. By nightfall, Harriet had a list, but one address refused to behave. It never lit up, never drew power, never appeared on outage logs. Yet, people were seen entering it and leaving, always alone. Dyrus went first. The building sat behind an old records office, wedged into the kind of space planners pretend doesn't exist. No sign, no gate, just a door that locked permanently closed and wasn't. Inside, the walls were bare. No maps, no generators, no equipment. Only a single ledger on a desk. Names, not suspects, not victims. Observers, people who noticed, people who spoke too early, people who asked the wrong questions and then stopped. Dyrus took photos. One name sat at the bottom of the last page, written lighter than the rest. Vincent, Harriet. He did not close the book. He left it exactly as he found it. At the station, the head of police listened without interrupting. When Dyrus finished, he nodded once. "He is not hiding," he said. "He is documenting." "Why?" Harriet asked. "Because documentation survives arrest," he replied. "And fear doesn't need leadership. It only needs memory." That night, the city received the message, not broadcast, not announced, a rumor, that one of the officers investigating the case had been transferred. Another rumor followed, that the head of police was under review. Neither was true, but both spread. And somewhere in Abeni City, the man above the map smiled, not because he was winning, but because the city was doing the work for him again. The next disappearance did not happen. Something worse did. Someone spoke. The person who spoke did not shout. They did not go to the press. They did not name names. They whispered to the wrong person. By noon, the head of police knew. Not from a report, from a pulse in the city. No new rumors, no fresh outrage, no disappearance, nothing. And nothing in Abeni City was never accidental. He called his team together. Harriet, Dyrus, two officers he trusted enough not to ask questions. "They are waiting," he said, "for panic, for another child, for the city to beg for a simple story." "And if it doesn't come," Harriet asked, "then they lose control," he replied, "because fear that doesn't move forward turns inwards." They released Emeka quietly. Not cleared, not forgiven, released. The city reacted exactly as predicted. Anger fled, then confusion, then doubts. Harris remained in custody. Sadiq remained suspended. 3 men, 3 rows, no clear ending. That night, the head of police stood alone in the office and recorded a message he did not send. Instead, he saved it. Because some promises work better when they are delayed. Across Abeni City, lights stayed on, doors stayed closed, parents held their children a little longer. And somewhere, unseen, unlit, the man above the map realized something had shifted. The city was no longer asking who, it was asking why. This ended without resolution, without closure, without relief. Only this understanding settling quietly into the dark. The hunt had not ended. It had matured. I know you enjoyed the story. Ensure to like, subscribe, and tap on the notification bell so you don't miss an upload. And endeavor to comment on the comment section. Thanks for watching and bye.